Okay, this has got to be the dumbest collective whinge about one of Labor's policies I've ever seen. And I remember when Scober was claiming Bill Shorten would end the weekend.
Bill Shorten wants to end the weekend when it comes to his policy on electric vehicles.
The only thing that ends the weekend is Monday. Well, Tuesday if the King's birthday is on a Monday. Bill Shorten's policy was an electric car subsidy, not a Monday subsidy. There has been a proliferation of commentary on Labor's recent political donations reforms, the Electoral Legislation Amendment, or Electoral Reform Bill for short. Everyone from Clive Palmer to Climate 200 basically claiming that Labor's proposed reforms would end democracy. Guys, don't you know the only thing that ends democracy is when more people vote for the candidate that you don't want to win? Interesting bedfellows though, aren't they? Clive Palmer, a mining tycoon with political ambitions who doesn't care at all about climate change, and Climate 200's very own Simon Holmes a Court, the son of a mining tycoon with political ambitions who does care about climate change. I wonder what these two seemingly disparate political movements have in common. Now Simon, I'm going to have to drop the theatre for this part. You've really fucked my comedy bit for this intro, haven't you? I wanted to say that you're both fat or have some sort of physical deformity in common, but you're really not on Clive's level, are you? When that fat shit speaks, he sounds like a tennis ball got stuck in a vacuum cleaner. So, unfortunately, I am stuck with my only tool left, which is substantive criticism. Here's the substantive criticism. You ready? They're both oligarchs. In case you missed that, because you don't have the lamest form of autism that doesn't give you any greater intelligence or capability, just middling interest in skimming press releases from the Australia Institute. There are all these rich cunts that are now complaining that Labor's proposed reforms to political donation law will entrench, quote,
the two-party system.
How does this entrench the
Two-party system.
Well, by limiting political donations. Okay. By that measure, I guess keeping bribery illegal also entrenches the two-party system. I get that it's totally unfair. I was going to run for mayor of Canterbury Bankstown under a new third party. Geordies, pay me to get your DA approved, totally legit third party, stooge. Actually, that is just the de facto policy of any council run by a Maronite. But you'll see why the critics of this bill are not running against what Labor's bill actually does, rather just chanting buzzwords like uni-paddy. It's a typical Clive Palmer tactic. He did it with his campaign against franking credits, the negative gearing reform, just shouting death tax rather than addressing what the reforms would actually do, because if you bothered to look at the reforms, you'd realise most people in Australia would be for these reforms. You want to know what's so scary about this bill? Requiring donations over $1,000 to be disclosed. Ooh, the limit's currently over $16,000. How awful. Defining payments for access to politicians as gifts. Requiring all donations to be disclosed within a month, with even shorter periods during an election. Introducing a $20,000 annual cap on donations made by one donor to one entity. Introducing $640,000 overall gift cap on donations by one donor to all entities. Introducing a $90 million federal expenditure cap for political parties. Introducing an $800,000 expenditure cap for individual House of Representative seats, with Senate caps based on the number of House of Representative seats a party wins. Increasing the public funding for parties to $5 per first preference vote. Geez, that one's so scary to minor parties as it really benefits minor parties. What? This is the largest reform to Australia's donation laws in 40 years. There are currently basically no federal expenditure or donation limits, as pointed out before, with incredibly lax disclosure requirements. Sure, the bill could go further. Check this video out here to see how things like dark money are far more influential in elections than straight political donations. Sure, it could limit membership and affiliation fees. Sure, it could put greater limits on candidates donating to themselves. Sure, anything ever could be better or more tailored to your specific tastes. But we don't say Korn is an awful band and refuse to listen to them because we've seen the high bar of musicianship Mushroomhead has set. We say Korn rocks, but some people would prefer the no-holds-barred theatrics of Mushroomhead. Unfortunately, that hasn't happened. The reception to this bill from all the independent progressive new media thinkers, who for years have made a living basically regurgitating the one point that Labor takes corporate donations, has been overwhelmingly negative and simplistic, to the point where I think these new media outlets are either engaging in audience capture or just taking advantage of their audience because they know spouting vague, meaningless slurs like corrupt, duopoly, shady deal, and of course the classic uni-paddy, that gets views. Even if those slurs are literally parroting Clive Palmer to shit on the most consequential donation reforms in 40 years. Policy that these same media outlets have been ostensibly asking for, I don't know, forever? Does the chant, get money out of politics, ring any overly simplistic bells? Why have they now added to the bottom of the placard, no, but not in that way? I'm telling you, it's one of the most incredible about faces I've ever seen. To these people, eye-watering donations to the Labor and Liberal parties compromise these parties beyond reproach. But as soon as you threaten all donations, including donations to the Greens and the Teals, the sacred cows of the I don't have a team, well, Donations are just an important part of democracy, and Labor limiting donations is Labor trying to entrench themselves in the two-party system. Yeah, I guess that is true that Labor and Liberal do get more votes and therefore seats than the Teals, Greens and Palmer, so they would get more public funding and have larger expenditure limits under the new laws because Labor and Liberal get more votes and seats. What the fuck's your point here? This just in, the major parties are bigger than the minor parties. To claim that these laws are just Labor giving themselves an unfair advantage and deliberately entrenching the two-party system is so dishonest, solipsistic, illiterate and hypocritical, because really what they're asking for here is an unfair advantage. It's not these laws that entrench the two-party system. No, I'll tell you what does. Labor winning elections for 100 years. That's what's entrenched the two-party system. Of course, the oldest, still running political party in Australia, and first workers' party on earth, mind you. They're going to and should have a structural advantage compared to some random consultant that decided like 2 years ago, I'd be amazing at being an MP. I've seen an inconvenient truth. And you know what? I'm not even anti-Teal either. I love the fact that the coalition has a class and culture war wedge to contend with. It's fucking hilarious that every leader of the Liberals now has to walk this tightrope between throwing red meat to the Nationals and appealing to sensitivities of elite perimenopausal businesswomen. I love them because Dutton can now never be as insensitive as I have the luxury of being. And it's all thanks to those whiny broads, am I right? Yeah? Yeah, you know I'm right. I mean, talk about superwomen. They have time to vote in Parliament and cook dinner. I'm right about that one too, you know I am. Plus, since their wins, my stocks in plastic frame coloured glasses have gone through the roof. But everyone needs to be honest. The Teals represent small populations of the richest people in Australia, and Labor's reforms are threatening the power of these people, so I wouldn't be taking their advice like it's just passionate and principled. Their argument, seriously, this is their argument. They want to be able to buy more elections. At the end of the day, they're on the same side as Palmer. They're upset that billionaires' ability to end organised Labor's participation in parliamentary democracy has been made slightly more difficult. That being said, there are no provisions in these laws that single out Labor and the coalition. Everyone is equal under the law. It's just if your party is more popular, you're going to get more public funding. How the fuck is that unfair? And even more importantly, how is that not democratic? The other point I hear is that Labor and Liberals still have affiliation fees that will be exempt from the cap. Let's just translate that past their Paddington marketing firms. What they are saying is affiliation fees are paid to Labor by unions. Essentially, getting rid of that would completely sever Labor and the unions. That is the only reason that Labor is different from any of the rest of these assholes. It is because they are linked to unions. They are seriously arguing this. This is what they want. They are saying that they want Australia's union movement to be crippled even further. This is your saviour. And secondly, this exemption will apply to every party. It is not limited to the majors. Even if you don't like this exemption, it doesn't make these laws bad. They still represent a dramatic tightening of donation laws and an increase in transparency. Potentially any party could be in the prime funding position. They're just not going to be able to spend over $100 million in one electoral cycle like Clive Palmer did last time. So when you see the Australia Institute running petitions against these reforms, branding these reforms as the major party stitch-up, branding them as rushed, despite the fact that they were developed over 2 years through the Joint Standing Committee on Electoral Matters. Translate it in your head to this. The Australia Institute has a vested interest. They do good work. Then again, so does the Liberal Party's think tank, the IPA, once in a blue moon. That's essentially what the Australia Institute is, a think tank for the other faction of the elite class, which are the rich independents and Greens. You can't just take everything they say like it's gospel, as they have clearly demonstrated. They're more than willing to try and tank a good policy as soon as it threatens their preferred candidate's electoral chances. Saying this bill is rushed is so disingenuous. It's the exact same tactic the Business Council used to shit on Labor's industrial relations reforms. Both reforms which were brought to the election. Hardly rushed. As a commentator, it's really easy and fun to just shit on everything the government does, to claim everything every politician does is crooked and self-interested. It's what gets you the most views and the most cash. But you owe it to your audience to be more honest than that. It's incredibly degrading to public trust just to say that everything's bad, especially if it's the donation reform policy that you've essentially been saying for years is the root of everything that's bad. You can say that there are changes that you'd like, but to make the headline some bullshit about the uni party, that is really slimy. I've made plenty of videos praising Labor policy this year, but I've also made plenty criticising both Labor policy and Labor Party culture. And I've made these videos knowing that some of the messages aren't going to be popular amongst my audience. Even when I've criticised Labor, it's from a standpoint that isn't exactly throwing red meat to the YouTube algorithm, is it? If I wanted to exploit, and I mean truly exploit and grow my audience, I'd do the same thing. I'd just resort to the South Park giant douche and turd sandwich dichotomy of politics and cynically claim that everything's awful because nothing is perfect. Want a direct example? The new social media laws, which according to all the free thinkers in my audience, I haven't talked about. Even though this is the 4th time I've talked about them. I hate these laws. I gather you hate them, but a huge chunk of the population loves them and think they don't go far enough. There is no such thing as perfect in politics. There is no way to keep everyone happy. Twitter claps. But the lazy everything is shit rhetoric, it really picks up on the biggest audience because at the end of the day, you get to pose as this anti-establishment polemic while sticking no flags in the ground, standing for nothing, making no enemies, whilst you collect your checks shielded from the consequences of any political decisions. And you have the other bonus of not having to claim any moral culpability for anything ever because you're a pure non-participant. In the victim-oppressor division, everything is some giant corporation or crooked politician's fault. Because remember, power in of itself is a vice, and no one powerful can ever do anything good ever. It's an impotent, lazy, and I've got to say, egregiously opportunistic self-serving way of going about commentary, and I truly hope for the sake of Australia people start seeing through it. But that all being said, this Shane Dowling sleuth may be onto something. Maybe Labor pushing this bill is because they're paid by corrupt pedo judges. Think about it. I know Shane's audience has.